Welcome to Floyd Street's Finest. He is former Louisville assistant coach Mark Lieberman. I am Jack Grossman, Floyd Street's Finest, presented by the field, or part of the Field of 68 podcast network, presented by Title Boxing, where Coach Lieberman gets fit where I should get fit when I'm back in Louisville, located 849 South Hurstbourne Parkway, 502-630-0600 is the number. Your first class is free when you sign up there. Title Boxing, of course, we thank them. We also thank Kentucky Branded, your place to get UofL stuff, UK clothing, Kentucky Derby merch. Hey, maybe they'll have some Indiana national title gear. Probably not, but you never know with them. But with Kentucky Branded, we appreciate them as well. Coach, gonna keep it to a minimum. It's been a very fun few days for me. With as people know, I am an Indiana graduate, and Indiana won the football national championship. We're not here to talk about that today, but I had to mention it. And what was the most
Look, from the Rose Bowl to from what they've done, Jack. Enjoy the all the accolades and revel in all the success of Indiana football, which you and I were talking before the pod started. You can't make that up. And people to think Indiana football to beat Alabama, Oregon, and Miami to win the national championship.
And Ohio State, the Big Ten title.
And Ohio State, I just totally forgot that one too, is absolutely bonkers. Bonkers. There's no other way to describe it. God bless. And you ever want to say everybody has a chance? This is for the rest of time. They're going to just point to Indiana football. Well, hey, there was Indiana football, so every team has an opportunity now.
Yeah, if you're Louisville with Jeff Brom, if you're Kentucky with Will Stein, you're saying, well, if those schmucks can do it, why not us? And of course, it takes a guy like Signetti to be able to pull something like that off. But man, it was a crazy game on Monday night, crazy ride. And I'm a Cubs fan. Also, I never thought something would be wilder of a story than the Cubs winning that World Series. I think this one might do it. I mean, obviously Louisville in 2013's up there as well. That's what at the time that I was
but I never this.
Because because that's Patino, and they had it rolling for so long, and Louisville had the Denny Crum era. Like, it wasn't out of the realm of possibility they could win a title, especially that team making a Final Four the year before.
Look, the Cubs will break hearts, but the Red Sox, but their baseball teams, you can absolutely. Those are organizations that can even the playing field. But you're talking about what Indiana did is really unfathomable. And to your point, it puts so much pressure on a lot of coaches in college basketball and college football that, okay, why can't you win in 2 years? And that's going to be everybody's going to want the blueprint of Curt Signetti. His books are going to be falling off the shelf because everybody is going to want that. That's always when a coach wins, it's always what's the formula? What's the secret? And you can almost see with Signetti that I don't think it was anything advanced, anything. He got the right fits and look what happened.
Yeah, just played disciplined, smash mouth, old style, football.
Yeah, he didn't reinvent the game. Yeah. It wasn't like we saw things that were exotic offensively or defensively. They just manned up and beat you. Said, hey, this is what we're doing, and we're going to beat you.
Yeah, which hell of a ride for them. And yeah, it's been fun getting to follow it. But yeah,
congrats again, Jack.
Thank you. I won't bore everyone that wants to talk basketball here any longer. I just had to. And I'm a basketball guy too, but I just had to say it.
I completely get it.
A lot of fun, but we all going to talk, obviously, Louisville basketball. This is Floyd Street's Finest. You can follow Coach on Twitter at Coach Lieberman. I'm at Jack Grossman 97. Like, subscribe, do all that stuff. We're going to get into Mikel Brown practicing again. Louisville blew out Pittsburgh. Aly Khalifa has really come around the last couple weeks. We'll get into all that stuff. But I want to start with, we're recording this on Wednesday, late afternoon, early evening. The Charles Bediako news that came out earlier on Wednesday. For those who don't know, Charles Bediako was an Alabama big man who last played for the Crimson Tide on the Brandon Miller team, which was the number 1 overall seed, 2023 loss in the Sweet 16 to San Diego State. Really, really great team. It's kind of when Alabama did kind of their Indiana football, announcing their presence to the world with Nate Oates of like, yeah, no, we're not just a gimmicky thing. We're here to say we're going to be really damn good every single year. But Bediako at that point made what I said at the time and have honestly kind of said since, a pretty bad decision, to be honest, to not take the NIL, to come back to Tuscaloosa, to try the NBA draft, even though he wasn't considered a top 40, top 50, top 60 prospect, has been kind of kicking around in the G League the last couple years. He played 2 years at Alabama. So if he would have stayed at Alabama, he would have played last year or played 2 years ago and played last year and he'd be out of
Hmm.
eligibility. Instead, he has almost 3 years since playing his last college basketball game at this point, has filed a restraining order giving him a temporary, ability to play college basketball. I mean, Alabama has a massive game against Tennessee this Saturday, and Charles Bediako, as of this recording, will be able to suit up in uniform. And coach, there's two fronts. We're talking a little bit about this before the podcast. I don't blame Nate Oates for doing this because if you're allowed to do it, as you said, coaching's a cutthroat profession. You do everything you can to win. It comes off incredibly hypocritical after what he said a couple weeks ago with the Najee situation with Baylor. But but at the end of the day, I'm not necessarily mad at Nate Oates because if you're allowed to do it, you want to help your team win. But
Yeah.
for me, it's just is I know people got all up in arms with the London Johnson thing earlier in the year, like the Najee thing at Baylor, and I feel like this is different than that. Those dudes hadn't ever played college basketball before. London Johnson is, I believe, 21 right now. So that's still kind of in the age of college basketball. That's in, the so-called you get 5 years from when you graduate high school
Hmm.
to a window. Najee got drafted, but like he's a foreign guy. And like college basketball is really odd. All these European guys that come across the country now because they can get paid in NIL, like Illinois has all the Eastern European guys and all that stuff. I think that's all one thing, and we can argue whether or not that's okay or not. And I think there's good points on both sides of it. But if you're gonna let the European guys, I don't have an issue with letting G League dudes that haven't played college basketball before play either, to be completely honest. But this is a dude who, again, Charles Bediako is a good player. I've honestly spent the last few years talking about Alabama basketball saying, man, if only they had a Charles Bediako type player to really be that interior force on the defensive end. And apparently Nate Oates agreed with that sentiment. Trying to bring Bediako back. But for a guy who played 2 years of college, is now outside of that 5 year window of when you graduate high school and would have exhausted his college eligibility if he simply stayed in school. He didn't have to go to the G League. He made the decision to give up his eligibility to go play professional basketball. That was his decision. No one forced him to do that. He could have stayed. He could have made money in NIL. Honestly, the way the market skyrocketed, he could have made a lot more money in NIL than what he's been making in the G League. He's a good player. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but he made a bad business decision going to the G League. And to now have the idea of almost 3 years later of let's just come back to college basketball as a 23-year-old when you're outside of that 5 year window, that to me goes against everything that college basketball and college sports is supposed to be about. So I don't blame Nate Oates for trying to do this with all the other floodgates that have kind of opened, but to me, this is just such a different level than what we've seen even with London Johnson or Najee at Baylor or the European basketball guys.
But Jack, just nobody has a clue because look, the judge's ruling for the temporary restraining order because he sued immediately to be eligible when he came out, and that didn't work. Jack, nobody knows what the rules are. Nobody. So I could tell you that I think I mentioned in the last podcast that, or maybe a couple ago that yeah, there's former players that I know of. They're all trying to get back in, and you're just going to find lawyers. This is a great time because the NCAA, I mean, they have no teeth. So
They're
until
spineless.
something, right? Well, it's not only that, but they don't have the money. They don't have to put the lawyers and to go from a they've come out with that statement of, well, legally this is too much for us because they can't spend all that time in money hiring lawyers and defending these things and almost leaving it to a congressional decision. And how far down the road are we going to happen with that? So this, honestly, Jack, with all the stuff that we were talking about, this doesn't surprise me. And to think, I said this and I was on with Diener a couple weeks ago as well, saying this is not the last that we're going to hear of teams that feel they can make a run. That all of a sudden somebody's going to come out of the woodwork and somehow either be eligible or trying to get them eligible. I mean, Izzo joked about bringing back Magic Johnson and all those type of things, but Honestly, like,
I mean, if you're Pat Kelsey right now, why not give David Johnson a call, who only played 2 years of college basketball?
but do
Why
you think
not?
that's not happening? All
Yeah.
those things are happening. And, but in all seriousness, those things are happening around all these programs that want to win a championship, that maybe not all of them, but I could tell you that teams that feel they can, if they can do this because it's within the legal rights of them trying to do it, then, look, all cards are on the table. And my gosh, like, this is, it is absolutely bonkers that this would be a situation. But my God, like you said, he's got a restraining order, and wherever, maybe you find the right judge, maybe the lawyers know, hey, this is the judge we need to go to. This is how we're going to get him out. Like, all those type of things, man. This is. Everybody joked about this being the wild, wild west with the NIL. Man, we haven't seen anything yet.
I mean, do you think that this should be allowed? I mean,
No,
it's yeah.
I don't think this should be allowed, and I don't think even G League players probably shouldn't be allowed. But what are we? What are the rules? We just look. When I was in college basketball, and the last place I was at was Southeastern Louisiana, up until 3 years ago. We had manuals this big, and we had to take our tests, and we had to know all the rules and so on. And that's what, right when I got out, right when NIL was coming to the forefront. But my gosh, and that's, again, it's almost like when people call travel basketball AAU. It's not AAU. It's travel basketball. It's Nike events, Adidas events, just like NIL is a euphemism for. It's not NIL. It's not name, image, and likeness.
It's
This is
banned
just
players.
right. This is a professional league. So, and what are the rules? If we just right now had a college coach on our, they couldn't tell you the rules, and they have people in the university in compliance that don't know the rules. And if there's something that within a minute, that they can have an attorney that can find a small detail saying, well, we can challenge this. Why wouldn't you? Because who are you going against? It's not like you're going against the most powerful law firm in the country. You're going against the NCAA. And I could tell you from personal knowledge, they're not equipped. They're understaffed. They don't have the resources to hire attorney after attorney and fight these lawsuits. And they've come out with that blanket statement saying, we don't want to fight it. We'll let the courts decide. And so it's asinine. I can't explain it. It's not college basketball of what we remembered, but it's still a beautiful game. But right now it's not. It's pro sports. And if there's a way that you can bend it, I don't care what the coach says, just like Nate Oates' comment about, this hurts the high school kid, this hurts that. If he was approached by somebody who said, you know what, we can get him eligible. We're going to, okay. What's he going to say? No? Give me another player inside, that you said, an inside presence that could help us get over the hump and maybe win a national championship. Well, my gosh, that's what's going to happen. So, for me, this is nothing that I'm not surprised by all this, Jack, at all.
Yeah, I mean the thing you bring up with the NCAA rulebook's kind of funny. It makes me think of back in the day when I was interning at ESPN Louisville. There was a segment we would do every week, and this just shows how kind of big and absurd the NCAA rulebook was. This was before the NIL days. It was over.
Mm-hmm.
It was on Mark Geddes' show on 93.9 The Ville. It was him and Luke Hancock, and I would come in and Mark got me a copy of the NCAA rulebook, and I would go through and find the most ridiculous rules in the NCAA rulebook. And some of them I would alter a little bit. I would just read out rules and make them guess. And I made some up also and just say, hey, is this a real rule or not? And it's just ridiculous. Some of the things that were in the rule book talking about, like, you can only feed a dude if they're X miles away.
28
You can,
miles away if you're
you know,
over 28 miles from campus. Jack, when I was at Louisville, and the first test I had to take, I studied this manual, this like an encyclopedia, and I was so nervous going into that test that, my gosh. And one of our assistants at FIU failed that test and couldn't go out recruiting for 30 days.
oh, wow.
Now it's a pamphlet. And now I'm not even sure if even some of those tests are even applied now, just like I've talked about the APR and all that other stuff. It used to be such a big deal. Now, you'd have to, some of that stuff, oh, well, an occasional meal, what can we spend on this? And you'd be back and forth with compliance. Now we're talking about getting pro guys or guys who've been out of college and their windows up back into school at 25, 26 years of age or whatnot. And, this is This is what the world is of college sports. So to rage against the machine, I don't know what. Listen, I'm not one of those people who just I love talking with you. I love talking sports. I love talking about the inner workings of basketball. But the legalese and how all this works, I try and stay out of it because it will bend your mind because it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I do want to reiterate, I think most of this has been a positive for college basketball and college athletics. You look at the talent level in college basketball today versus what it was in 2019. And I'm not trying to disparage the guys that are playing college basketball that in 2019. Yeah, that was the Virginia year. They were phenomenal. I loved, Cassius
Mm-hmm.
Winston and that Michigan State team. Kansas had it rolling. Baylor
Mm-hmm.
had the core of dudes that were coming together. It was a there are a lot of good players, but it's just such a different level now from what it was because you're keeping guys in the sport longer with NIL. They're making money that they should be able to make off their name, image, or likeness, or even just straight up playing players. Yeah, they should get paid. Sorry, like they deserve to make money, in my opinion.
I've
But
always felt that
yeah,
way. I've always felt they deserve to be paid. I've always felt, but the system, it was never, it was rigged from the get go
yeah,
because they
and
never
then
had a system. And
yep.
look, I'm reading, I've read about it, and look, you've got Judge Roberts of Tuscaloosa Circuit Court ruling him eligible. So why
Yeah,
can't
you
you
think the
go to?
Tuscaloosa, you think the
Why
Tuscaloosa
can't
judge is
you?
going to rule against Alabama in that
Right,
case?
and you could talk. Why can't Luke Hancock come back and play?
Yeah, I mean, no,
And you
no,
mentioned
like
David
seriously,
Johnson,
yeah.
and why can't you get a lawyer in this town that would and grant an injunction and so on? So look,
Just don't find one that's a Kentucky fan.
well,
Yeah.
you think they're not working every angle?
Well, no,
Everybody
no,
is.
no. Like seriously, if I'm Louisville, it's a little bit of a shame that the years of guys that would probably be doing this were like the Chris Mack, Kenny Payne eras, where there's not a lot of great bigs out there. But maybe they should just go back way back and grab Montrezl Harrell. He only played 3 years of college.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? You're telling me Montrezl Harrell wouldn't help this
Well,
team
we
right
just don't
now
know
if
the
you're
rules, right? I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, but like David Johnson's a very recent example. I mean, if you're Kentucky, what's stopping you from, trying to pull like Oscar Sheboy or Ty Washington out? Some guys that haven't had great professional careers that still have eligibility left. What's stopping Indiana who doesn't have guard play worth shit from like trying to get Jalen Hood Schifino, Romeo Langford to come back?
nothing
like,
is.
like, why not?
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to allow this, anything is possible on that front. And that's kind of where a lot of this to me comes back to the NCAA put its head in the sand for decades and just kicked the can along with NIL and paying players and all that stuff to where there wasn't any infrastructure built up when Congress said, no, you have to do this. There wasn't anything set in stone. There wasn't any preparation for this. And the NCAA, as a result, has just been so far behind the eight ball for 4.5 years now on this. And it's hell
Longer
again.
than that,
Yeah.
Jack. I mean, I can go back to when
I
I
just go
first
back.
got
I,
in.
I just go back to July 2021 because
Oh,
that's when NIL was
I
legalized.
understand
But yeah,
that, but like if you look at what you had to do with appeals and how the NCAA took forever, and it just you always felt that was looming. That who is running the show? Like who's making decisions? It's almost like any decision is just is on a whim, and I saw that firsthand when I first got into college basketball in 2010, 11. Is that wow? This is really how it's done. And we were waiting forever with Wayne Blackshear with some grades and so on. But
as I
this
remember,
ha-
he didn't get eligible till like I want to say it was a February game at West Virginia when he first played.
right,
Right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and the stuff was again ridiculous, and it just didn't make sense about how your decisions are made. So I'm like, this model probably is not going to be sustainable. I felt that back then, and we would joke about it as coaches. And eventually, we felt the NCAA would be taken over by a different entity, but now it's just showing. It's almost like they should just again put their tail between their legs and let somebody else take over and make decisions. Because right now, until Congress gets involved, you're going to have all this stuff going on.
Yeah, because Congress always just comes in and saves the day. They're
I'm
quick
not
and
saying they're going to
efficient.
save the day. That's
That's
you're
what the
absolutely,
NCAA says. That's what all the presidents say. That's what the
that's
conference commissioners say. That's the other thing here.
yeah.
Everyone always says, well, someone else should just step in. The NCAA just in the same realm of why people hate Roger Goodell. Roger Goodell is just the face that gets thrown out there because he works for all the owners of the NFL, and he's just enforcing the rules that the owners of the NFL come
Mm-hmm.
up with. The NCAA is just a public figure that the schools can just throw darts at and use as a scapegoat. You know why? Who comes up with the NCAA rulebook? Who comes up with all these whack ass policies from the NCAA? It's the presidents, the athletic directors, and the conference commissioners. It's the schools that make the NCAA what it is. So the idea of, well, the NCAA just got to go away and someone else is going to run it. You're going to trust the presidents to run it? You're going to trust the college conference commissioners, or they can't even get a damn playoff together in football to see how many teams they should put into that thing. You're going to trust them to fix this? Hell no.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the answer is, but the idea
and I'm
of
not
just
saying,
I know you're not. I'm just fighting.
It just has to be
Yeah.
national law. Unless
Yeah.
there's a law in place that's voted on by, our court system, then why would you not challenge everything?
Yeah.
And what do you have to lose?
Yeah. The other thing I'd add is if they would have, when NIL became legalized, if they would have come out and straight and said revenue sharing 20.5 million or whatever the heck the number is at that point, that honestly probably would have been a workable number. But to wait the 3 years to do it, when at that point
there was no plan. And then I remember when they came out, it was a free for all. Initially, they were trying to give us rules for the NIL, and then it just didn't make any sense. So that's where we're at.
Yep. So, anyways, that was a 25-minute tangent on Charles Bediako and the situation there.
I see how much it bothered you, and I see how much that, because again, we don't have any clarity. We don't have any understanding of what we can do and what we can't do. So to think this is the last story that we're going to hear, I mean, someone's going to roll somebody out before the NCAA tournament. Something's going to happen.
Well,
but if you're going to have a judge in your own state and own district that can vote on something like this or pass a law, my gosh. I mean,
did you see the Pete Thamel had this before we move on, what UConn's athletic director had to say on it?
I did not.
It's a fascinating quote. David Benedict is his name, and basically he said the NCAA has deemed Bediako ineligible. Fine, he can play, in parentheses, on a judge's ruling. It doesn't mean the games need to count towards the NCAA tournament. Otherwise, throw away the rule book and set it on fire. There are no rules. Basically arguing the NCAA still has the right to determine what games count towards the NCAA tournament and which games don't count. So he has the argument of any games that Bediako plays should not count towards Alabama's NCAA tournament resume, which
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I like the idea. Good luck trying to enforce it.
Exactly.
But I mean, that could be, maybe that's one way to try to get around the judge ruling, I guess. If Alabama beats Tennessee and Bediako, then the selection committee just puts a big ass X on that game.
Yeah,
that would be interesting. That would be really interesting. So, anyways, a lot has happened since we last talked on Louisville basketball's front. You want to start with Mikel Brown practicing or the Pittsburgh game?
Look, I think the Pittsburgh game was the get right game for him, and watching that, you could just see the focus defensively. They were just locked in. Pittsburgh's not a very good team, but that's what you got to do to teams like that. So now it's getting over the hump with beating a good Virginia Tech team on Saturday, and then it's just got to be a 1 or 2 possession game Monday night where they have a chance to win. That's what the expectations now are. That the narrative of, well, they've got to beat the good teams, and in year 2 of Coach Kelsey, I think he's done a hell of a job. I think his teams are prepared and they're really good. Now it's just a matter of we got to get over that hump because they're good enough to do it. They just got to beat one of those games and have a watershed moment. And I think that would happen on Monday. Virginia Tech, though, is going to pose a challenge. I mean, that's a good team. Just like we talked about when I said Virginia is pretty darn good.
Yeah.
And, this Virginia Tech team is in that same mode where it's going to be a challenge on Saturday.
Yeah, Virginia Tech beat that Virginia team in what was a triple overtime, wild, insane game. Yeah, Virginia had a huge week last week. Obviously winning at Louisville, but following that up with a win at SMU. They get North Carolina at home on Saturday, so they're surging at the right time. They are. That's unfortunate for Louisville, but we saw. I'm with you. There's not really much to take away from the Pittsburgh game. It was good after with how poorly they started the Virginia game to jump out 13-0. But honestly, I'm trying to remember what game was on before the Louisville game.
It was
The Louisville been
FSU and Wake Forest.
Yeah, which that was a good game. That was a
It
close game that
was.
went down to the
Uh-huh.
wire. But I was like, okay, I'll just leave it on this. I'll watch Louisville once that pops on. It's already 13-0, and
Uh-huh.
then it's like 39. I'm like, okay, this game's over. Good, you did your job. As you said, get right game, all that stuff. The one thing I do want to hit on real quick is Aly Khalifa. I want to get your thoughts on him.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Since that Duke game, he's 11 of 18 from three, 61%. He's not going to shoot 61% from three the rest of the year. We're not asking that, but to me, he's a dude that looks like he's finally knocked off all the rust. He's found that rhythm in his shot again. Since that Duke game, when he shoots the ball, just looks so much more confident coming off his hands than it did the first couple months of the year, where he was 5 of 18 from three to start the season. So he's shooting the ball a little more often. He's shooting the ball a lot more confidently. What does that do if he can be the dude he was his first 3 years as a college basketball player, where he was a 32% 3-point shooter or above each of those 3 years, including a couple years where he was 35 and 38% from three? If he can be that guy, how much, even without Mikel Brown, hopefully, Louisville's hoping to get him back soon. How much does that open other things up for the offense and just give such a different element for what UofL is trying to do on that end of the
I
floor?
remember watching last year's practice and when he was sitting out, but how much time he would spend, and that's one thing that Coach Kelsey stresses with his bigs is shooting the basketball. So imagine how much time he's put in. It's still perplexing to me how he's being guarded. And we've talked about that before. To me, I would be just extend that pressure, make him have to beat us off the bounce. It almost makes him comfortable when you're in drop, or you're even when he's getting into those zooms and making those decisions, or you're saying, okay, go ahead and shoot it because we're so scared of you as a passer. I mean, there's ways to defend it, guarding the bottom foot of the cutter in the zoom in different ways. It's almost like these coaches aren't putting meticulous details into how they're defending Louisville, because for me, I think to make Khalifa uncomfortable in the way he's shooting the basketball, we're extending pressure. We're bothering the ball. We're bothering him and so on. But he's getting, teams are so afraid of what he can do. He's leading them in assists. I said he's their best playmaker right now. So look, when you're comfortable out there and you're a coach, it's all about, in this game, Jack, if you have the confidence of a coach, it does wonders for any player in the world. When your coach is saying, shoot them up, sleep in the streets, which is like, hey, we don't care if you miss it. It's an old phrase I got from Fran Fraschilla, but this is one of those things where, hey, just shoot it. We completely believe in you. And when you have that, that's what Khalifa has right now. So, when he's not guarded, hey, I'm going to knock him down, because we're so worried about what you can do with that basketball and beating us on the back cuts. Is that, hey, will that continue? But no, but I still think that he's going to get good looks, and he's stroking it really well, that, hey, he's going to get opportunities. Again, I'm fascinated with how teams are guarding Louisville in certain aspects. It's almost like you're not prepping for them. And we talked about that when Kentucky played them. It's just a little mind-boggling. At the same time, I hope that happens. I hope he has freedom of movement, is able to knock down shots, and can make plays too.
Yeah, the other thing, how many times have we talked about how your best defense against trying to defend a post player is pressuring the ball and making that post feed
Mm-hmm.
really difficult. I would
Exactly
think the
right.
same. I would think the same thing would apply with how good of a passer Khalifa is. If you get
No
up on
doubt.
him and pressure him,
Mm-hmm.
it makes it a little bit harder for him to drop those backdoor
Well, even if he's going to make those
passes. Yeah.
passes, he's going to have to work for it, and you're going to make it a struggle. You're going to make him think about you and not about the play. Where, look, and that's it. That's why you watch Louisville when they switch and you have a McNeely or a Conwell on the ball. Guards don't want to turn it over, and they're getting pressured. And how teams are not pressuring Khalifa and not pressuring him, to me, it's a little surprising.
It is surprising, and it's something. It's almost like they're just trying to copy and paste the same game plan of how they're trying to play through. I
Mm-hmm.
almost would think, just to kind of simplify it, would be my best guess. You can completely correct me if I'm wrong on that, or like you said, it might just be miscouting. But
Yeah, you have on the scouting report, you're going to have tendencies. You're going to go over it. Whoever the scout is, usually the assistant coach is planning that. And so if I'm doing the game, if, for example, they're playing Virginia Tech, but Monday is Duke, I'm assistant number one or assistant number two. I'm handling Duke, so I'm watching every film, and I'm saying, okay, this is a guy that's not a threat. I'm putting his numbers up. I'm saying, look, we can't let him just catch and shoot. He's shooting at an unbelievable clip right now. We're pressuring him. We're making him go a certain way. We're forcing him to even go left. So if he has to make those passes, he's going to have to go across his body. You're as detailed as possible in all these scouting reports. And, that now that you have older players, you're expecting more of them. But honestly, Jack, yeah, you're going to games guarding guys differently. Because like with Frew, look, he's a guy that probably we would want to shoot the basketball more than we would want Khalifa. And you have to be more physical with him, maybe doubling down, fronting him, because he can score around the basket. Where Khalifa, you can play behind and just wall up where he struggles. So there are different ways that you guard the post. So it's not just like you're just going to copy and paste it. But again, I look at some of these teams defensively and what they're doing, and it just surprises me.
It is, and that's something that one, I wonder now that Khalifa's building a bigger sample size to be able to shoot the ball well, if that changes at all, or if that's something that he can just simply keep taking advantage of. Either way, I think it's advantage of Louisville, because if you're putting more of an emphasis on Khalifa, that's going to open up a lot more for what UofL is trying to do as well. So definitely an extra added element there. I want to get to Mikel Brown. Obviously, that's been the big story for UofL really the last month, 6 weeks or so since he last played in that Memphis game on December 13th. He's back practicing today. Or yesterday, whatever, Wednesday, whatever is what Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever day I saw the video. We still don't have a timetable on when he will or will not return. If you're Louisville, obviously you want him back as quickly as possible. You would love to have him back for the Duke game on Monday night. Because we're asking this question when we thought he was going to potentially come back for the California game and the West Coast swing, where it only been a few weeks that he had been out. Now that it's been a full almost 4 or 5 weeks, maybe even 6 weeks since he's played a game, if he does come back, how does that work trying to acclimate him into the offense and into what you're trying to do?
Well, first off, it's like he's practicing. We just don't know if it's non-contact, if he's just being in some, 5-on-0 actions and whatnot. That's things we don't know. So it's not like if he's going live up and down or he's just running sets and so on. Getting him acclimated, that's not as much of a problem as far as the team goes. They understand how he plays. They trust him. He's a good teammate. That's not the issue. The issue is his conditioning and his ability to do the same things and be comfortable and feel good enough to do the things to make him the explosive player that he is. So I don't think getting him acclimated back to what they do, he gets it, and he understands what Coach Kelsey expects. His teammates expect it, know what he expects from them, and vice versa. So that's not the issue. The issue is what kind of conditioning is he in, especially with a back injury? How much can you actually do to be not winded in the first 2 minutes? How your minutes will go. Defensively, teams are going to attack him, no matter what. They're going to run him off screens. They're going to run him off ball screens, no matter what. They're gonna force it into actions. I know Conwell and Hadley, and even you have Woolley and Kobe and all those guys guarding the basketball, and sometimes not trying to hide Mikel, but putting him in a position where he's not guarding the primary ball handler. But teams have a way of getting into those actions, whether it's go screens, whether it's dribble handoffs, whatever you're going to do to put Mikel, to compromise him defensively. That's what teams are going to do to attack him. So it's not an issue of him getting back with his teammates and whatnot. It's just a matter of his conditioning and how other teams are going to attack him on the defensive end.
I'm bringing up the conditioning aspect of it. I know this is something that, to be honest, Bill Self, who's a Hall of Famer, one of the best coaches of all time struggled with, even with Darren Peterson, trying to bring him back a few weeks ago, because I'm looking at, they're playing UCF. Peterson's played. He has like 30 points. Why is he not on the floor the last 4 minutes of the game? This is kind of bizarre. It almost felt like Michael Jordan in the Last Dance documentary when he was coming back from the injury, and Jerry Krause like, you can only play the 11 minutes or whatever the heck the number was, 7 minutes each half, I think it was if you're Pat Kelsey, how do you navigate if there is some sort of pitch count or minutes restriction, that sort of thing? You have to be able to make sure you're picking and choosing your spots to make sure if you're down 3 points with 3 minutes left, Mikel Brown's in the game, because you're not just having him limited because of some self-imposed minutes restriction. Yeah,
no doubt. And you're looking at that. You're navigating how it's going to work. Obviously, if you have a chance before media timeouts, at the 17-minute mark, there's a loose ball or there's a dead ball situation where you can get them out and get the extra rest before a media, and get some substitutions late in games, offense for defense and defense for offense, where you can take them off. where he's really on the offensive end and so on, and managing again. And then you trust your players too. And then look, the eye test, you have your coaches. There's copious amounts of stats, and some coaches are assigned to watch two players. You're watching two players. You're watching two players to see if they're sprinting back every time, to see how they're running offensively. Every staff has that. And now that you have so many coaches and so many graduate assistants and so on, you can watch that and monitor. Plus, you go back to where you just have a tug on a jersey where a player says, hey, I need one. And then you can get them out that way. It's the tough part of it, but because all players want to stay on the floor, but you can see if he's standing up straight, if he's not running, if he doesn't look fluid and so on, then those are situations where you take him out. It's a tough pill to swallow as a coach because, you want him to play 30, 35, but he just won't be able to give you good minutes playing that many. You want to get quality over quantity. So if you can get him for 17 or 20 minutes in a game when he comes back, then that's the goal. And being judicious about when you take him out and media timeouts, and then maybe, again, seeing how his back feels and keeping him stretched, keeping him loose, keeping him hydrated. Those are all important things. We saw earlier in the year where we thought he was hurt, where he had the cramp against Kansas and that kind of stuff. So those are issues that are going to come back immediately. So just making sure that, nutritionally wise and making sure that he's got, his body feels right. Because, look, you want him for 30 games, not 30 practices. So you got to make sure that he's right, that he's able to play, because you certainly need him for the stretch run as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about at this point, right? Because where Louisville is, they still have a lot of big opportunities coming up. Obviously, the Duke game being the biggest one, but you still got to go to SMU, to North Carolina. You got to play Clemson as well. Well, Louisville has a lot of big games coming at Virginia Tech. I believe that's a quad 2 game coming up this weekend. You got to get him in a spot to where, yes, you want to win those games, but you've also missed a big chunk of games to where I don't think it's possible anymore for Louisville, unless they were to just go on a complete tear and run the table. I don't think like a 2 seed is a possibility for Louisville at this point.
I think that's kind of, that ship has sailed, because you're just not going to, as you said, get those huge quad 1 wins and passing the eye test right now. But look, if you can continue to get better, which this team can do, and make a run and get one of those big wins. Obviously, you can get a win Monday night at Duke, and we talked about
season changing.
That's season changing. But like we talked about, they're going to be, now that you've played against those players and have that feel, you're certainly not going to come out passive like they were in the first half last time. They're going to be uber aggressive at how they're going to guard Conwell, how they're going to pressure, how they're going to force Louisville to play at that tempo and make things not as easy as it was in the first half, like we saw in the second half. But if they can make that run in the ACC tournament and so on, then the seeds can go up. But
and again, it's honestly, it's less about the seeds though at this point, which is ironic because me, I love the numbers, I love the seeds, and talking all about stuff. Like
I know
like
we're getting close to that time where you get to talk about all that stuff, Jackie boy.
Oh yeah, but like Louisville can still, I think, get a protected seed, be like a 4 seed, but I don't think whether you're a 4 or 5, or I think they'll be better than a 6, but I think they'll be somewhere in that range at this stage. It's less about that. It's more, how do you get Brown back, get everything clicking to where you can make a run as a 4 seed. You can make a run as a 5 seed. We've seen that many times before in March Madness. Hell, UConn won a title a couple years ago as a 4 seed in very dominant fashion. It's more about, can you get yourself playing your best basketball at the right time, which is always what it's about, no matter what seed you are. But I think that's especially true for this Louisville team, as they've kind of gone through the slog of playing without your best player for the last month or so.
Yeah, and look, sometimes it doesn't click until that last week or 2 of the season. You're going through so many things. The really well-coached teams and the teams that are prepared are constantly fighting battles. And what I mean by that is there's practices, and there's a guy who's not happy with his minutes, and there's different things going on. And you just continue to overcome all those obstacles in those type of situations, like Mikel, his injury situation, and find a way to get him right where by February, he's feeling good about his body. He's feeling good. He feels good about the way he's playing. He can move the way he wants to move. And then all of a sudden, no matter how the season ends, all of a sudden you start playing well in the tournament, in the ACC tournament, and then that can bleed over into the NCAA tournament. So look, at this point, we thought Louisville was playing great basketball last year. Then Creighton came up and just showed you, hey, this is what it's about. So this is getting those guys understanding. And so that, from a coaching standpoint, they get it as well. So yeah, the seeding part, I think they want to get to a point where you're not going against a heavyweight in the first game, and then you can get because no matter what, and I've been blessed to be in the NCAA tournament a couple times. No matter what, that first game is a doozy, and so everybody's just ramped up, and just to get over that hump about winning one, and certainly that's what Coach Kelsey is not feeling, but that's what the sense around town is. Hey, we really, this is the standard is, hey, let's get to the NCAA tournament, but let's get to the second weekend, because that's the goal for everybody. If you can get to the Sweet 16, you've had an unreal season. And Mikel they're not doing that without him. So at this point, how healthy is he? Practicing is one thing. Everybody's all excited about that. But again, that could just be where you're just running up and down and getting shots up. Is he getting in there? Is he mixing it up? Is he live? So we'll find that out. Obviously on Saturday, we'll see if he's able to play. Because again, I mean, I watched a couple of Virginia Tech games. I think that team is pretty good. And with Hansberry, I mean, that guy's a beast, man. That guy is, and that's probably the kryptonite probably for Louisville a little bit, is a guy like that who's that powerful and strong and can rebound and finish around the rim.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be pose a really, really big challenge for Louisville, especially that interior presence. The other things that kind of stand out to me, Virginia Tech, top 10 in the country in defending the three-pointer. Opponents are only shooting 28.8% from behind the arc against them. They're also a top 15 team in terms of taking care of the ball in terms of turnover percentage and that stuff as well.
Jack, in the Virginia game, and people were like, well, Kobe Rogers hasn't shot the basketball. Well, when you pressure the perimeter like Virginia was doing and funneling them into the bigs, I mean, that's what happens and so what do teams do? They watch the film, and it's a copy. Everybody's heard the term copycat league. And so it is. You watch a scout, you say, wow, this is what they did to defend it. So this is how Duke defended it. We're going to really pressure their guards and make them drive, because they're not taking mid-range shots. They're either getting to the rim, and we're going to wall up and make them kick it out and overclose and force them off the line. So I think that's the formula that Virginia Tech is going to absolutely adopt, that they saw what Virginia and to what Duke did in the second half. So that's what teams are going to do to defend Louisville.
Yeah, and if you're Louisville, that obviously getting Mikel Brown helps, but in that front as well. But you got to do a better job of getting into your ball movement, playing with the pace that you want, and also it's a little bit harder to defend them if they're getting stops and getting out in transition, which Louisville was not getting many stops at all, especially that Virginia game.
No doubt. That's how they play, and that's all predicated. We've seen that. This is a team that wants to get out and play with flow and get out and run and get some easy baskets before the defense is set. They don't want to play against a set defense. That's not what they want to do. Even with Mikel in there, they don't want to play against a set team. They want to play where there's a disadvantage, where they can back cut, and you have to occupy or plug or be concerned with a guy cutting to the basket and tagging and so on, where it opens up shooters, because these guys do a great job of moving without it. But they want to get back before they want to force you to cross match. They want to force you to not sure what your coverage is in ball screens and zooms. But against a set defense, then it's a whole different animal. So that's what Louisville wants to do. And we saw that on Saturday night against Pittsburgh. That's going to be important against Virginia Tech, to get stops and to get out and run.
Yeah, and I think Louisville's front court is going to have to, Fru's going to have a big game. Khalifa's going to have to keep playing well. And I'm looking at Kenai Roos, man. I know we've talked a lot about him. I had this thought. I was on Will McDermott's podcast last week, and this kind of just randomly came. I just kind of, what's the right word? Had an epiphany, I guess. I that's probably the wrong word, but just kind of talk about Kenai Roos, what I think his role can be offensively. I want to get your thoughts on this. I like the idea of, is I feel like a lot of the times we see Roos out there with Fru, and that kind of leads him to being on the perimeter, because you don't want to clog the lane with two guys in the paint. I think you play Fru with Khalifa, or not Fru, Roos with Khalifa a little bit more. You could put Roos in the dunker spot. You can use him. He needs to be a better screener, but if he can screen effectively, use him almost in a little bit of the James Scott role from last year, to where you put him in the dunker spot. You have four shooters around him. Use him as a screener. Use him as a guy. If Khalifa is throwing a backdoor pass or a cut or a pass on a backdoor cut, you can have Roos right there for a lob. If the defense comes over, it helps. If Conwell gets downhill, he's right there. He can be active on the offensive glass. Just trying to figure out ways he could be on the floor without kind of being perimeter oriented where he hasn't shot the ball very well. He's struggled with turnovers, trying to take advantage of the inverting offense you can do a little bit with Khalifa. Instead of going 5 out, maybe some 4 out, 1 in with Roos being the unconventional guy that's the 1 in.
See, I kind of like Roots on the perimeter if he would understand, hey, because when you're on the perimeter and the way the amount of threes that Louisville shoots, that
Long
gives them
rebounds.
such well, not even just long rebounds, that gives them a chance to just go back up there and get a putback in and to anticipate where their shots are going from. And obviously with his athleticism to rebound, it's almost like for him to have a Horace Grant role, like with the Bulls, where there's no place for you. You're just going to go offensive rebound everything. You are going to just finish plays. It's rare that you'll see Louisville in actions where there's just a guy just predominantly in a dunker spot. Last year, you used Chucky off of ball screens and off of Spain actions, where it would end up where James Scott, because he was limited, but hey, he's 7 feet, throw it up to him. If the big comes off body comes off a body, there's the lob. I don't know if that's a fit for Ruth's style of play.
Fair.
I don't know if he's a great finisher around the rim. I think he's long and athletic. I don't think he's elite around the basket, but he is athletic enough. He's their longest guy. I just think if he could just be an absolute force defensively and just run the floor and maybe get some easy baskets, and then there's that miss and seal a guy and get the offensive rebound and kick it back out for another three. And then there's the drive. Now they're scrambling, and there's a drive. There's a dump down to him for a basket and so on. Because we know he's not going to be a guy that's going to create things off the bounce, Jack, but he's a guy that can do all the things that affect winning. You're not going to have – it's just like in football. Offensive linemen are the most important thing in the game, but they're not touching the ball. So a guy like Roos, you mentioned it, if he can be a great screener, he can get offensive rebounds, he can defend and run the floor. And by running the floor, nobody's better than Mikel Brown at looking up and pitching ahead, and then there's one dribble and a dunk. Or there's Mikel coming downhill and missing it, and he's there to clean it up because a body came off a body. If he could be that guy, he can be an X factor for this team for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Because even, in the first Duke game, I thought he was really active defensively, gave you some good things, but he only plays 12 minutes because, let's be honest, he took 5, 6 threes in that game and missed all of them.
He's limited. That's not what he does, right?
Yeah, and I know we had the whole conversation of and Pat Kelsey especially is going to do this of instilling confidence in shooters and all that stuff. You don't want to crush a guy's confidence. It's
no
can
doubt.
you find ways to get him involved to where it's not just catch and shoot threes or dribble into a bunch of guys when he's not the best ball handler at this stage and cause a turnover. It's can you do things without the ball to set you up to get some easy looks and some easy looks for others as well.
And you mentioned it because it depends how you're guarded. If guys are not pressuring you and they're playing off you because they don't think you're a shooter, then you become a great screener because you're not played. Now you have an angle to screen, and that guy can't really help on whatever actions, whether it's a hammer screen or a pin down or a Ricky screen. It doesn't matter. Whatever type of screen you're setting, because the guy's sloughing off you, that enables you. When they're pressuring, that's why you can back cut. You can't really, you don't see guys. That's when, Khalifa has the ball. Guys are so concerned with him and they're back cutting because they know they're going to get a touch. But Roos has to find that dynamic where, all right, they're playing off me. I am going to be the best screener in the country. And a shot goes up, I'm obsessed with getting those rebounds because no coach takes a rebounder off the floor. And Louisville is a team that wants to offensive rebound. They're sending guys to the glass. He's got to be that guy that becomes like Rodman, tip it out to myself, grab it, a bit undersized from that standpoint, but he's long and athletic enough to do it. I just don't think he's a great finisher, but he can do those type of things right now to affect the game and be an impact and help this team win.
Yeah, because I think that's the thing. We've talked about him a lot. Like, I think figuring out how to get him on the floor and have him be effective against bigger teams like Virginia Tech, or obviously you play at Duke next Monday, that opens up so many other things for Louisville. If you have that added size like that, to where even, especially if you don't have Mikel Brown, that helps you slide guys down and to where you're not playing Conwell and Woolley as many heavy minutes as you've had to do. If you're able to get away with playing McNeely at the 2 a little bit and sliding Hadley down to the 3, that I think helps you out in so many other ways, especially on the defensive end. If you're able to figure out how to get Roos on the floor and have him be productive when he's on the floor, because he's, again, like we've talked about many times, he's proven against lesser competition. He's taken a jump. It's can you do it against the best of the best is really going to be a big determination. Other than other than Mikel Brown coming back and whether or not that happens and when that might happen, that's one of the biggest things, along with kind of where Louisville's been at defensively, as we've talked about, struggling to stay in front of
Hmm.
drivers. And I think, especially that Virginia game, they really, really struggled rotating against Virginia's ball movement and closing out on shooters. That's one of, I think those three things are going to define how far Louisville can go come March Madness.
Yeah, and he brings that length that the other guys on the perimeter don't have. So like for him to be able to close out and so on. And look, even against Virginia, there was times where you just saw guys out of a stance and some of those, and that's something they can't get away with. But you need Roos, you need Mikel Brown for this team to make that kind of run. And defensively, that just adds. You just have more depth. You have a guy like Roos who can just be such a factor, defensively. You know he wants to do it. He seems like a great young man, and he's bought in. So hopefully they can utilize him, and he could be a guy that can help them as they make this run.
Yeah, and I think he's eventually going to get there. The question is that going to be this season or next season? And that's I think that'll go a long way to deciding out what Louisville will be able to do. But they get a chance this Saturday against Virginia Tech. Big one for the Cards there. We'll have to see what happens on that front. And then obviously the big rematch with Duke on Monday night. Does Mikel Brown play or not? Hell, you guys know as much as we do on that front. They've kept it pretty closed book on that one. But anyways, that's all we got for today. For Coach Lieberman, I'm Jack Grossman. This has been Floyd Street's Finest.